Welcome back, everyone. Craig and Jonah here today. How are you today, Jonah?
Doing pretty good.
I made Twitter really mad.
I saw that.
Um,
And I hadn't been on Twitter much, but then I saw when you guys were talking in the chat about your viral tweet. I was like, well, I got to check this out.
every so often, just lob a grenade into Trata stand. Boy, they're mad. They are really, really attached to their old. I almost said old fashioned, but traditional sexual rules. Boy,
And all that you did was you put together a poll, right?
no, that wasn't the one that got. That one got people mad too.
Okay, yeah.
The one that started it all was this, and so for people, if you don't know my other channel, you don't know my Twitter channel, just save yourself the grief. So I'm going to stay in the dark. But for those that are aware of it, I put a tweet out because everyone's been tweeting about the next pope and who it's going to be and what they want and don't want, and I said something to the effect that, if the next pope really wanted to help Catholic marriage, he would take up these issues and I very clearly put this in. I said, if theologically possible, which in my mind means like, if it can be done, do it. If it can't, fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't saying everyone should do this. I wasn't saying the Pope needs to do this or could do this. I'm like, if he can do it, here's some helpful tips.
That he's not hearing from anybody else.
That's right. Well, and I see why now. Holy cow, I see why. So, and I apologize for anyone that's in this audience that's gonna be offended by this, but I think this group can handle it.
I think they can.
So I said,
if it's possible,
if the Pope can do this, which, admittedly, before I get into it, would require the Pope to rewrite or unwrite some rules that are quote unquote on the books. Now, the question is whether those are infallible or not. I think that's the distinction people forget. Like, just because it's been written down, even by a pope or a church council, doesn't mean it's without error or can't be changed. There's a certain, rarity to things that are just absolutely true, cannot be changed.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just like, if this falls into that category, here's some things that Pope, if he really wants to help Catholics out, here's some things you could do. Number one, permit and or encourage couples, they want to use other acts. Now, I think I said non-sexual other acts or something like that. Which
I wasn't sure what you meant by that. Actually, you talking back rubs or what?
Well, no, but when everyone asked what, I was like, well, if you have to ask, you probably don't really want. I know you're not going to like it. I was trying to distinguish stuff from intercourse.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I meant to say. So, but it didn't matter. I mean, I think a lot of them would be against back rubs too. So,
or kissing between the navel and the knees.
Apparently, we'll get to that in a minute. So, anyway, other acts. Most of the people that have been following the show know what we're talking about there. But if you're not, it's more than just a back rub. I don't think there's too many. Even the most hardcore trads think that's wrong, but maybe. But basically, what you always hear is couples can do things, but it can't result in completion except it's done the right way. I'm saying, well, maybe not the right way. maybe it's completed not the right way. If the Pope can allow that, I think that would help Catholic couples that aren't using birth control and stuff. Number two, and this brought out because if people know my Twitter profile, I got just lots of heckling, which they thought it was really cute, as if I didn't, as if my Twitter name isn't purposeful. But I said, let them engage in coitus interruptus once in a while, which I know there's a section in the Old Testament about it, but I think even Taylor Marshall doesn't think it's for the reasons that most people think it is.
The one thing you agree on.
Yeah. So I wish he hadn't blocked. Well, no, actually, I'm okay if he blocked me, but
you get blocked a lot.
Oh man,
they do not like your opinion. Do you think you threaten their security?
I don't know.
Don't be asking questions.
They're just for people that are like self-described bold and brave, and we're gonna go take on the infidels in the next crusade, sure are kind of weak when it comes to social media.
Just simple questions.
Just like, but
like when you asked the one guy, he's another podcaster too, about why God gave us emotions. Then he blocked you.
Well, in defense to him, he had seen this prior tweet and give me a hard time about it, so he probably recognized me. I think me asking why God gave us feelings wasn't what set him off, but he blocked me after that question. So maybe he was very sensitive, very, very, very sensitive people. So that was number 2, and this is the one that really got me in trouble.
Maybe they'd be less sensitive if they got laid every once in a while.
It's worth a try.
Can't hurt.
So I got lots and lots of pushback on that. Try to have a reasonable conversation with traditional Catholics about what the story of Onan means is really, really hard. So anyway, that was number 2. It's like, if it can be done, take a look at this. And then number 3, and this brought out all the pitchforks and haters. And I says, and for couples that can't or won't do 1 and 2, maybe let them go solo once in a while. That doesn't fly in Tradistan at all. People are really attached to their anti-self-abuse position.
Got a firm grip on that.
They do. Yeah. Boy, oh boy. The names you get called when you suggest that, even though if you look at section 2352 of the Catechism, it's pretty tolerant. Now, most of those guys probably don't think that's valid teaching. They probably think that's heresy anyway, but wow. So it went viral. I got ratioed, as they say.
What does that mean?
Based on the number of views, I got way more comments than likes.
Oh,
that's being ratioed, which is true.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but it got.
Congrats.
I don't know that Matt Frad picked it up. If he did, I didn't see it. But there was a number of very, very big named online Catholic commentators that are like, "What the hell is this?"
Boy, that's funny.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm willing. You want to have a conversation about it? No, we don't. And that was sort of the gentle response. And like you said, some of them just outright blocked me. But boy, nothing gets Catholics riled up, traditional Catholics riled up more than this stuff. And they're like, "Oh, you're promoting heresy." I'm like, "Well, how is it heresy to ask the Pope if it can be fixed? Fix it." Well, of course, they all think, "Well, this can't be fixed." Well, it's fine, okay, but I don't think you or I are the arbiters of whether this is rock solid, irrefutable church doctrine or not. I'm just making an observation about how this could help Catholic marriages.
That's a fair point.
Anyway, it's kind of calmed down over there. Maybe I've been blocked by all the people that I was a little surprised that there wasn't more support. I suspect that even our closest fans probably like, I'm not going to throw my head out into that mess, given how people react, whatever. But I understand the futility now of expecting any pope to stick his or her neck out.
Her? What, really?
Yeah, well, it's for Christmas. I don't know. I know the Pope doesn't have to be celibate. I don't know if they have to be a priest, but I don't know if they have to be a man or not.
I think they have to be a man, but I don't think they have to be a priest.
I think
it can be any Catholic.
Yeah.
Man.
Me, probably. Can't be a heretic. But
boy, wouldn't that be a surprise?
Yeah. Boy, guys. This is awkward, isn't it?
Got to get into the conclave and get your thoughts into the conclave.
This is awkward, yeah.
Maybe they're sharing your tweets.
I would just really like to sit in a room, just talk to someone who actually has control, actually has the ability to write things and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally get why they're like, just take it up in the confessional. Leave us out of it.
It's true.
And that's basically
Because what would happen if the new pope did do something like that?
Oh
I mean,
my gosh. It probably would cause a schism. It probably would cause a schism. And so, as near as I can tell, no changes on the horizon. But if we get to it, I have an interesting observation about some other rules that kind of just went away in the Catholic tradition. So maybe these will follow. Probably won't be in our lifetimes, and probably not our grandchildren's lifetimes, but we'll see. All right.
Sorry, I'm distracted. A calf got out, and they're texting about it. Can we push pause?
Okay.
All right. Sorry for the interruption there. Everything's okay.
We had some
cattle issues.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know what's going to happen in this studio.
No, that's for sure. When I saw my mom calling, I was like, what on earth is going on here?
Should put her on. We can.
I wasn't sure we just want to patch her in live stream. And,
that'd be fun. Huh?
Yeah. Then I saw the text and I was like, oh, man.
Okay. Oh, so it wasn't the wife?
No.
Oh, okay.
I called her, but
okay.
Because Dolores said she'd go up and check on it. So.
Okay, good. All right. Problem solved. So anyway, I don't know if we wrapped that up, but I was going to play a little Christopher West.
All right.
How about that?
Yep.
Incidentally, it was sort of an after. So the way their show is, they kind of like gab at the beginning like we do, and then they answer 3 listener questions.
Mm-hmm.
The second one was much longer, and if we have time, which I don't think we will today, but I'll get to it another time. Essentially, the wife, they've been married 25 years, and the wife discovered that her husband's been going solo every day pretty much their entire marriage, and using porn.
Okay.
As you can imagine, the normal reactions to all that.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was the third question, because that when I saw it, I was like, okay, that sounds like it'll be interesting stuff for us. There was a third question that actually caught my attention that I think might be kind of interesting. So we're going to try and play this question for you.
Next question.
Okay.
Next question is from a listener named Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
I am a bride-to-be and have been charting my cycles for years.
Wow.
I saw that too, like years. And I'm assuming they haven't been engaged that long, but
that's wild.
Oh.
All right.
Recently made the terrible discovery that I will be starting my period on my honeymoon.
Bless you, bless you, bless you.
What? Does he not like?
It's an infertile time. He should be celebrating.
I don't get this guy. His comments just always seem. I just imagine Wendy being like, "What? What are you doing?" Kicking him under the table and stuff. But all right, continue on.
Told my mother this fact.
Wait,
she told
why
me.
would you tell your mom? I guess I don't know. Maybe women.
Some people, yeah. I mean, for them, they deal with it every month, and they might be close to their mom.
Okay.
When I told my mother this fact, she told me that I would have to wait to consummate my marriage until after my period was over.
Gosh. I am interested to see what he says. I wonder why. We going back to Leviticus for that reasoning or what? You gotta avoid the temple for.
You're reading my mind.
All right.
This attitude confused me. I've been looking into Catholic resources about period sex and have been finding very little.
Welcome to the Uncharted Catholic Man.
Yeah, I wonder how many resources are available.
Well, this will be a resource, I think. Not necessarily a good resource, but this will be a resource by the time you're done. He didn't say anything about the quality. Okay.
No, it was taboo in the Old Testament, but understand that this was a law related to cleanliness. Can you just tell me if it's okay to have sex during my period?
Well, she reads it dramatically there too.
Mm-hmm.
Man,
yeah,
that was a bit dramatic.
I thought so.
For
Yeah, for the question.
For the question.
Yeah.
Nobody's dying. We're talking about period sex.
I don't know. Is someone had the same experience at the beginning of my marriage. It was kind of traumatic. I mean, I was like, what? Really? Thanks.
Bless you, Catherine. God bless you. Gosh, we go through so much as human beings, don't we?
Yes.
And how often these things are, these painful things, tender things are related to intimate matters of our bodies and
Mhm.
sexuality. So thank you for entrusting this question. Catherine, there is nothing objectively amiss about coming together during your period.
Okay. Well,
there might be.
Were you expecting a different answer?
that is probably the fastest he's responded to any question that
I know
we've addressed.
I know. I was a little surprised. I
Got
thought
right to the point.
I thought we'd have some long, elaborate
Comparing
discussion about unrelated events before we got to it.
Or the sexual union compared to the mass, whatever.
There must not be a nice liturgical rite that lines up with period sex, I guess. Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Reasons to avoid it, personal reasons, or perhaps for the reason of discomfort. It could be uncomfortable, depending on physically how you are doing and what your body is going through to consummate your marriage during your period. But there is nothing objectively contrary to authentic marital love if both parties understand the situation and are accepting of it. It can be a time for a particular tenderness. It can be a time for a particular acceptance on the part of the husband of his wife's body and the way God made her body. There could be good reasons to abstain. There could be good reasons to come together. So that would be my short response. What do you want to?
It's a fine response.
Yeah,
I agree.
surprisingly so. Oh, but
typically when you key these up, we don't always agree with him, but I think, it's fine.
I want to well, he goes on to say, I'm going to see if I can find it here easily. He goes on to say that he was surprised that her mom had this position. It's like, where do they come up with this stuff? And I'm thinking, like she said, yeah, back in the olden times, Christopher West seemed to be unaware that people used to think this was wrong. Which I don't know.
Hasn't read Leviticus.
Well,
that's fine.
Or a lot of church fathers. We're going to get to that in a second here.
Oh, no kidding.
Boom, boom, boom.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So
I'm excited now.
All right, you're going to get a little lesson here on period sex. So I'm going to, and to do that, I went to the best internet source of information on this, which is ChatGPT.
I prefer Grok myself, but
yeah, ChatGPT works a little better on my screen sharing.
Okay, all
right. Well, maybe we'll run some checks on Grok and some of the other ones too. And again, as a disclaimer, I haven't gone to verify these. So if I misstate anything, I apologize. But I'm just telling you what ChatGPT said, and I know from having studied some of this in the past that it's more or less accurate. But let's go ahead and let's read some of this. And so I'm going to. Okay. So I asked ChatGPT. I said, "How has Judeo-Christianity historically viewed the morality of sex during menstruation?" According to ChatGPT, historically, Judeo-Christianity has generally viewed sexual relations during menstruation as morally problematic, and at times as ritually or morally forbidden.
Oh.
The details depend on whether you're looking at ancient Jewish views, early Christianity, Catholicism, later Protestant thought. So here's a careful breakdown.
Oh, man. So I grokked it too. I've got some heavy hitters in here.
Okay. Well, let's hang on.
You go through your list first.
So I don't think it's any great mystery that in the Old Testament, under the Mosaic law, Leviticus 18:19 says, "You shall not approach a woman to uncover her nakedness while she is in her menstrual uncleanness."
Can't even uncover her.
No, you're on your own, babe.
Get in the period bed.
That's
I'm not
right.
getting near that.
Yeah, exactly. Truth can be stranger than fiction sometimes. Leviticus 20:18. If a man lies with a woman during her menstrual period and uncovers her nakedness, I don't know what that means. Maybe he has made naked her flow, and she has uncovered the flow of the blood. Both of them shall be cut off from among the people. Cut off.
Wow.
I mean, that's
So if you want to avoid Christmas with the folks,
yeah. Got a confession to make here.
yeah, we can't make it.
Yep, sorry. But you're cut off. So it's not like it's like go to the temple and sacrifice a dove or something like that. It's like you're cut off from the people. That sounds comparable to mortal sin stuff.
Yeah.
As Catholics, but so it goes on to cite Ezekiel. In Jewish law, there were the Niddah laws, Niddah. I'm sorry I mispronounced that.
Right.
So not just ritual impurity, but disobedience to this was seen as a moral failing, punishable by exclusion from the community.
For how long?
Cut off. I think it's permanent.
A permanent
I don't know.
shunning.
Sorry, I don't have a lot of.
Even the Amish don't shun like that nowadays.
I could be wrong. I'm even more ignorant of Judaic law than I am of Catholicism. So,
all right.
So maybe it is a
That's
temporary
some
thing.
serious stuff, though.
Yeah, you don't mess around with that, apparently. Anyway, rabbinic Judaism, which is post-biblical, which I suppose is Judaism after Christ, has affirmed these prohibitions. And in fact, I've been exchanging messages with a modern day practicing Jew. I think he's a rabbi over on Twitter, and he confirmed that because I was bemoaning the life as a Catholic. He's like, "Oh yeah, we can't have sex for like 7 days after menstruation, buddy."
Really?
Yep. So they still follow that.
So they have to start like during the peak time.
I don't. Well,
So
I
they don't
know.
have to be done.
Yeah, you do the math, but I was like, I don't know how they decide when it's done. So anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, saw a drop. I don't know. So yeah, there's 7 clean days after bleeding ends, which are required before resuming sexual relations. It says here, violations says I don't know. I think there's some that still hold this. Were seen as grave sins, both ritually and morally.
Right, it's pretty serious stuff.
They take this more seriously than the trads.
Yeah.
So, sex during menstruation continued to be viewed as a serious violation of both ritual purity and God's moral law. Early Christianity. Early Christians inherited the Jewish moral framework, but gradually moved away from ritual purity laws. It says the New Testament does not directly address the issue, and I think that's correct. However, early Christian writers often followed moral interpretations of Old Testament sexual ethics. It says here, church fathers like Origen, Augustine, and Jerome taught that while Christians were not bound by Jewish ritual laws, sex during menstruation was still improper, often associated with impurity and a lack of respect for the sacredness of the marital act.
Yeah, that is correct. I have Jerome as well on my list, and Clement of Alexandria suggested that sexual relations during menstruation were inappropriate, aligning with Jewish traditions, and then Augustine of Hippo. So a pretty heavy hitter there.
Is there any actual quotes? Because I've got a couple coming up here, and then we'll see.
I'll ask it. It says that Augustine viewed sex during menstruation as potentially sinful, as it could prioritize carnal desire over spiritual purity.
They must have figured out that you can't get pregnant during the menstruation. So
naughty.
Yeah. Although I don't think it's impossible, but
well, nothing's impossible.
Yeah. So it says under medieval Catholicism, it largely continued as viewing it as seriously improper. It was classified under the broad concern for marital chastity and natural law. Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century regarded it as against nature, potentially sinful, because it disregarded the proper order of marital intimacy, which he closely tied to procreation. Penitential manuals, i.e. Guide for Confessors, often required confession and penance for engaging in sex during menstruation. So, summarizes, it says it was a grave matter. I don't know how close they got to the language. Let's say we find in 2352, but it seems very similar to me. So it was a grave matter, though not precisely the same as ritual impurity anymore. It was considered a violation of the natural law according to ordering of sexuality. Where have I heard that before? It's got some stuff in there. Actually, Martin Luther and John Calvin hung on to that teaching for a while. But what's interesting, so it goes from Aquinas to modern Catholicism. It says today that the Catholic Church does not explicitly forbid sex during menstruation. There is no canon law or magisterial teaching categorically prohibiting it. However, it is still considered a matter where reverence for the body, mutual respect, and prudence are advised. I agree. Yeah, that seems pretty sensible.
Yeah.
Some Catholic moral theologians argue that marital relations should respect the dignity and comfort of the woman. I agree. So if menstruation causes distress or comfort, abstinence may be appropriate, but it's not treated as a sin per se. So it asked, would you like some specific quotes from early church fathers? I'm like, yes, I would. So here we go. Origen. This is probably the most interesting one. Origen, who lived from 184 to 253.
And supposedly cut off part of his body, right?
Yeah, I think it's the same guy. Origen clearly connects menstruation to moral impurity. And this is supposedly a quote. If a man has intercourse with a menstruating woman, he is unclean for 7 days. Such a person must not approach the holy things of God until he is cleansed. The soul is defiled by touching blood, that is, by being polluted with the impurities of the flesh. I guess that's not the one I was thinking of. That's a homily on Leviticus. Now, Origen, I think Origen is kind of, I don't know what his status is of the church because he had cut off a certain member, but he was a pretty well-known early church father. Saint Jerome, maybe this is what I was thinking of. So Saint Jerome is a pretty famous Catholic church father. I think he's credited with putting the Vulgate together, if I remember correctly. So, and he lived between 347 and 420, and it says Jerome was stricter and more graphic. He linked menstruation to impurity and strongly discouraged intercourse during this time. This is supposedly a quote. Those who indulge in sexual intercourse with their wives when they are in their courses are guilty of sin, and their children will be born leprous or epileptic or possessed by demons.
Wow.
That didn't sound great.
It's a bold threat.
Yeah. So seems like he wasn't a fan.
Seems that's strong language.
Yeah.
Wonder if he had any proof.
Yeah, I don't know what they used for but it
wonder how they connected that.
Well, remember our episode how many on masturbation, how they used to blame all these wild ailments on it? I see some similarities.
Sure.
Between how they historically used to treat that activity with this activity.
Yeah.
St. Augustine.
So thoughts have changed over time, maybe is what you're saying.
Yeah, and what's interesting is it doesn't look like there was ever a repudiation of it. They just kind of stopped talking about it after a while.
I mean, given a homily on period sex, probably, I would think that's somewhat rare, but
yeah, we've changed your mind. You could all go home and I don't know. They're like,
for it to be recorded, it must have been noteworthy.
Yeah, I would think so. Maybe those guys just didn't have a lot of time on they had a lot of time on their hands to write about stuff, but
I don't know if our priest gave a homily about period sex today. I think I'd remember that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I would think so. Augustine, so he lived between 354 and 430, is alleged to have said the marriage act itself is not blameworthy. Wow, that's good for you, Augustine. Very progressive. But it must be conducted properly. Where we heard that? Oh, wait.
There's certain ways of engaging in the conjugal act which are proper and ones which are not.
There you go.
All right. But it must be conducted properly without any defilement, such as would occur if a man copulated with his wife while she was menstruating.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty well. I have a quote from him as well that says the law concerning the woman in her menstrual period was given to signify that the flesh is subject to corruption and that people should abstain from certain things to learn discipline.
So my reading, and this is just mine, so take it for what it's worth, which probably isn't a lot. I think by then they had figured out you can't get pregnant when you have sex during the menstrual period, which is probably why people did it. I don't think Augustine was so traumatized by the impurity issue of it. It was like, don't be having sex when you can't have babies. Like that was his whole stick, right? It was like he even though he said it, the act itself was not blameworthy. He was pretty clear. Don't be doing it unless you're trying to make a baby. So I think his angst with menstruation intimacy was more about that than it was about kind of the conditions. That's my reading.
Yep.
So take it for what it's worth. Augustine frames it as an issue of moral decorum and proper order, not merely ritual impurity, right?
Yep.
So Thomas, do you have any other ones in that time frame? You said there was a Clement of Alexandria quote.
I don't have a quote from him per se. It was just a summary, but they just say that Augustine interpreted menstrual impurity symbolically as a sign of human corruption and a call to spiritual discipline. So,
okay,
I don't know. I mean, he's kind of like Christopher West, I guess, connecting things maybe where it's symbolic.
We'll come full circle.
Yeah,
circle of life. Okay. So Aquinas. So
Aquinas weighed in on this.
Yeah, well, he didn't miss anything. Thomas Aquinas, who was, lived in the 13th century, in his Summa Theologiae, supplement to the third part, question 64, article 4. Whether it is a mortal sin to have intercourse with a menstruous woman. Quote.
Menstruous. That's a good word.
Yeah. I don't know why maybe it sounded better in Latin. The matrimonial act is rendered unlawful by menstruation, not on account of the act itself, but on account of the accidental circumstance, namely the uncleanness of the woman. Therefore, it is not sinful in itself, but on account of a certain irreverence. I don't know what that means. So here's the expanded explanation. And I don't know if this is, again, quoting from that section of the Summa Theologiae or not. Says the Old Testament forbade intercourse with a menstruous woman on account of the uncleanness whereby the act would be disordered. Now, although that uncleanness does not defile us spiritually under the new law, yet the respect due to the sacrament of marriage demands that such intercourse be avoided. I think they're just, took a while to shake the Old Testament dust from the sandals is kind of how I look at it.
Yeah.
So it says, note, for Aquinas, it was no longer a ritual impurity, but disorderly because it was contrary to the due reverence owed to the dignity of marriage. He distinguishes between mortal sin if done knowingly and contemptuously, and venial sin if done through ignorance or weakness. So
isn't most of it weakness? I mean, I suppose you could plan those just like NFB.
Yeah.
So NFB could be a mortal sin, perhaps, in that situation.
John Farrell is going to come out of the screen and give you a big hug.
John, we agree.
Yes. So anyway,
that's funny.
So it's just,
I do have a good quote here. John Chrysostom, I guess it's not a quote, but the AI says that he focused more on the spiritual state of the couple rather than the specific physical conditions. So he was soon to be fine with it, or more.
Well, like I said, I think to the extent that the early people, that means, had realized that if we engage during this time period, our chances of getting pregnant go way down. I think probably was maybe the long-term hang up that a lot of Catholic theologians had, because like I said, really until Humanae Vitae, I mean, even up through Casti Connubii in the 1930s, it was, and this is John Farrell's whole shtick. It's about procreation. Don't be doing this for fun and pleasure unless your primary objective is to make a baby. So, but then it just kind of went away.
And now this is okay.
According to Christopher West. I mean,
If he says
if it's good
okay.
enough for Christopher West, it's got to be good enough for God.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I just it may be, kind of hearkening back to my original point, my Twitter feud. I'm starting to realize that to the extent that there are things that have been taught in the past that are not necessarily viewed that way now or not enforced, it seems like the mechanism is just eventually just to stop talking about it, as opposed to making some formal declaration. Yeah, we don't believe that anymore, which is, I guess, kind of what I was after. And there are plenty of people who came in the comments and says, just keep the Pope out of this. Don't invite opinion on this, because it might not be a helpful opinion, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sensitive to that too. But I just know that for a lot of, especially for Catholics, we like assurances. One way or another. We like that black and white, that this is okay or this is wrong.
It's true.
And people don't like to live in the gray when our eternal salvation is on the line.
And I can see like why they may not have liked period sex, 1,000 or more years ago, because they thought it was gross.
Yeah. Kind of is, I guess. But when you're beggars can't be choosers, when you're using NFP,
that's what you get.
You already got plenty of abstinence, so how much more do you want? I don't know.
It's true.
So I don't know. I thought that was, I thought it was interesting how I was a little surprised that, because I didn't play all of it, but like I said, Christopher West's comments suggest he was kind of oblivious to all of that background, which I'm aware. I was well aware of. I'm like, I don't think they were really big fans of that in the past, which they weren't.
Yeah.
But some of this other stuff is, I don't know, I guess more untouchable.
So thoughts can change over time.
Seems like
possibly.
It. Seems like it. That's all I'm saying. Just can we look under the hood and make sure the stuff what we said you can't do is definitely you can't do, or isn't maybe in some way a product of the same Old Testament ritual impurity ideas, superstitions, things like that. I don't know.
Yeah, like the one from your tweet that makes the most sense is the other acts.
Yeah.
Because
it
seems more natural than the other stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll see. I think I won't be talking about that on Twitter anymore. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But
How many views did it get? How many views did it get?
Oh, a lot.
It's in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. Like that went, as far as my stuff going viral, that definitely went viral.
That had some reach.
Did. It really got out there.
So you think, I mean, how many people were Catholic that saw that? But then who saw that? Like you're talking bishops, possibly cardinals could have seen that. So you never know.
There was a few.
Maybe the future Pope read that.
There was a few priests that commented.
How many? What did they say? Anything interesting?
They were negative.
Okay.
There wasn't any. Let me see here. I want
to. Any? How many likes?
I'm looking for it. I tweet a lot, so I have to scroll here. Oh, here we go. Do I want to boost visibility? No, I do not want to. 127,000 views.
Okay.
23 bookmarks. That's kind of interesting. 34 likes. 118.
Only 34 likes out of, oh my goodness, because
180 comments. Almost all really negative. Really negative.
Boy, you drew some heat there.
And a lot of screenshots. So the views would not include some of these people didn't even want to like give me credit for it, so they screenshotted it and shared it on their platform. But
no kidding.
But I saw it because I follow them. I follow
these people. Man. So there's no way you could. I mean,
can't track that.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I can't track that.
That's wild.
So sometimes there's one lady in particular who's a former adult industry actress who's a recent convert. Very.
That's her name, right?
That's
her name. It's her Twitter name. Yeah.
she's very enthusiastic, and she quoted it. She put it out there, and who is it? Kind of like I slid into the comments, and I'm like, man, I said, who is that guy or something like that. I don't know. I get why people are uncomfortable with it, but I thought I thought the level of react, and then and just the names I was called really uncharitable based on that tweet.
Like what?
Like, well, the heretic and stuff, was the light stuff, but Goomer, I think it is.
Gooner. Okay.
Yeah, I had to Google that.
Yeah, I
what
had
that
to
is.
Google that as well the other day.
They just throw it around like it's common language to those folks. So
Maybe it is to them.
I don't know. I'm just like, so, but I've run the polls. I've talked to people. I know.
You know what goes
here.
on.
I know I'm not alone here. But so these.
But do you think that the last one, the solo part of it, is what bothered people the most, more than other acts?
I would say it was pretty evenly distributed, but that one was the cause of the most name calling and stuff like that. Which, fine, whatever. No one wants to be that guy that has to go. And again, I was like, I'm not telling everybody to do it all the time. I'm just saying, like, as a last resort, which I think my perspective was pretty close to what 2352 says, especially the second chapter and stuff like that, where they says moral culpability can be reduced to nothing. I'm thinking to myself, if the guy that's gone weeks or months without it, I mean, if that doesn't fall into that, I don't know what does.
So really, we're looking for a dichotomous key. Like, is your wife available? Yes, no.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
It was, all of this is both in principle and practice a matter of last resort. Like, if you can do the full thing, everyone's going to pick that. If you can't,
here's the options.
Then you're going to, most couples would prefer that over the alternative of doing nothing. And then, like I said, as a complete last resort, guys like to, like, relieve some pressure, I guess. And holy cow, just like, people are just not able to have reasonably intelligent, respectful conversation about this stuff. So, hence the Uncharted Catholic Man. The only place on the internet that really talks about this stuff.
You started the conversation.
We did.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
So anyway, future Pope, if you're listening to this, we'd love to have you on.
For sure.
Send us a DM. One final thought before we wrap up here. I think I'm going to have a live stream with one of these guys who, as far as I can tell, is a set of a contest, probably single.
Definitely single. He will never answer my questions about what his marital status is.
Yeah. When I told him, I says, I'm just telling you, buddy, I get messages from a lot of people. My views are not alone. He's like, show them. I'm like, you just X out the names and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to post online messages that people send to me in confidence. That's true. I don't share this stuff unless someone gives me permission to do so. But he was adamant. Like, obviously you don't have it, otherwise you just share. I'm like, come on, dude. And he was as adamant that, proof. So I ran a couple polls, and the polls were exactly as I predicted.
I was actually impressed with the people that can hold it together.
Yeah.
From the polls.
Yeah. There's some polls out there that maybe we'll run one on YouTube again, but I don't know. I'm convinced that the extreme trad, sexually conservative dudes are all on Twitter. I think there's a higher density there. So I think it skews the results a little bit.
And since, like, in this case, the guy I am certain is not married, he has no idea what it's like.
Can't be. There's just, like, I kept telling us, like, from what you're telling me and the questions you're asking, you either have never used NFP, so maybe they're just like marital debt, give it to me whenever I want, sort of thing, which is, you're not going to understand it, or you're not married and stuff. And
I told him, I said, if you're under 30 and you're not married, I understand your ignorance.
Yeah.
If you're over 40 and you're divorced, I understand your bitterness. But I'd be really surprised if you're over the age of like 45 and you're happily married.
It can't be. Like, it's just, or I said, your experience is vastly different from everyone else I know that's gone through this before.
Yeah.
So
experience is important.
Yeah. It doesn't mean
it is.
It doesn't mean that those that don't have experience, that their opinions are irrelevant, but
They're less relevant.
This is just one area where you just, until you've been through it, you can't explain it. And the best way I can say it is, like, when I was a single early 20s guy, I would have agreed with most of what these folks say. But until you've lived it,
it's like offering parenting advice before you have kids.
Exactly. It really is.
It is.
Yeah. So anyway,
Whew. Well, try to rile Twitter this week.
Yeah, I'll come up with a different subject. It's not super hard to do, although all the people that would get excited have all blocked me now, so I don't know. I have to go use some alt accounts. I don't know, man. It's Catholics. I don't know. Catholics, especially the quote unquote apologetics, are some really thin skinned people.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm guilty in the opposite extreme, but you got to try real hard to block me. I was almost going to block our dear single friend because he was just so relentless. I'm like, come on, dude, chill out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. You create these echo chambers and stuff. I don't think that's healthy.
Yep.
So, yeah. All right. Christopher West and Taylor Marshall and those guys, if you're actually listening to us from some alt account, we have an open invitation. We'll do an interview with you anytime. We'll have a respectful dialogue and hopefully make some progress, or maybe you can persuade us, show us the errors of our ways.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Well, we're going to let Jonah get back to wrangling
cattle. Hopefully they're
cattle.
okay, huh?
Yeah. So hope everyone has a great week. And until next time, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good one.